Hi, welcome to the show. Well, as you can probably tell by my hat, today we're going to talk about the Yamhill Valley Camera Club. And we have two representatives from the Camera Club with us today. We have Chuck Hillestad and Steve Singleton. Thanks so much for being here. I know everybody out there is thinking right now, how can I get a cool hat like that? So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the club. How did it get started, Steve?
A group of people got together in 1972 and started the McMinnville Camera Club, and the next year it was changed to Yamhill Valley Camera Club to include everybody from Yamhill County.
Wow.
And they've been going strong since.
4
years.
4 years.
Yeah.
All right. And you've been a member how long?
I'm going to be starting my 6th year.
And you've risen to be
President.
President.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. And Chuck, how about you? How long have you been with the club?
I moved here in 2011. I think I joined just a couple of months after that. So since about 2012, early part. I first competed there in, I think it was January of 2012.
Competed. Well,
Right.
let's talk about that. How competition at the club, how does that work?
We have 2 meetings a month. Our first one's dedicated to business and competition. Our club happens to be part of a larger group called the 4Cs, the Columbia Council of Camera Clubs, that has clubs ranging from all the way over to Boise and up into Washington, down to Northern California. Each member brings some images, and we self-judge and send our 5 best onto them, and then they judge as a group for that month and have a larger competition.
So once a month, people bring their photos and they bring them on printed on paper.
No, they bring
No.
them digitally.
Okay.
Yeah, they can email them ahead, or they can bring them in on a memory stick.
Uh-huh.
And then we run them through a digital projector and look at them.
All right, that makes it easy.
Yeah.
So then those are judged and the 5 best go on to more
4Cs.
companies.
Yeah.
Okay.
And usually there's a certificate for the local winners and ribbons for the regional winners. That also goes on the regional website.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then there's you meet twice a month,
Yep.
first and,
The first.
It's the first meeting is at the second Tuesday at 6:30 at the community center,
second Tuesday
and the fourth Tuesday.
and the fourth Tuesday.
And the fourth Tuesday is for critique night and clinic night. And
That's different than the competition.
absolutely. On the competition, we have judges, and they're arbitrary and capricious. I'm being a little facetious there, but
Don't take it personally, that's what I'm hearing.
That's pure judging. I don't always agree with them, but sometimes I'm judged too. And then on critique night, this is when you have the members who aren't quite as skilled, because we've got a skill scale that runs from advanced professionals to dedicated amateurs from decades down to brand newbies.
People coming in with images from their cell phone.
Yes.
And that's
Right.
fine
Yes.
to start with. You don't have to walk
So
in
long
with.
as they've got this,
Okay.
it puts up on the screen, they're bringing in photographs. They want the entire group to come up with how to improve that particular shot. So if you got a question about something, having all this different level of skills, talk about it, it's really helpful. And sometimes you can then change the photograph and it goes on to competition.
What's the fun? What's the fun for you, Steve, in photography?
The fun is just sharing our interests and our love of doing this with our fellow people. You have a chance to learn some new things, and you have a chance to share things. There's a lot of talk when people get there, during break when we have snack, and also even afterwards, people will meet up and say, hey, we're going to go out and hang out afterwards and talk about more things about photography and just visit as friends. So it's a good opportunity to meet new people.
Meet new people, make friends, and I heard refreshments, snacks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You can learn a lot simply by getting out there and photograph. And really, no matter what your skill level is, you need to get out there and photograph. And you can learn by reading, you can learn by some classes, but it really helps to have something like a club so that you can get feedback on what you're doing. Because it's really difficult to judge yourself. Many times when I am going to be involved in competition, I think something is absolutely great. I submit 3 photographs, and then I think, okay, the 2 of them I really liked, and I got one here, just throw it in anyway. The other 2 I really liked, do nothing. And the one that was just afterthought of throwing it in because I needed 3, it goes on to win. So you need that feedback.
What's fun for you, Chuck, in photography or the club, either one?
Well, I'll tell you how I got started in photography
Okay.
and why it was always fun. I started a little Brownie and Stamatic, but then I got in high school and thought I'd like to meet some girls. So I got on the newspaper and thought, if I have a photograph and I'm going to the cheerleaders and saying I want to photograph them, I'm going to meet them.
Okay, so we heard you got into photography to photograph
To meet
the
girls,
cheerleaders.
yes,
Okay,
yeah,
very
yeah.
good.
And subsequent to that, I got involved in Sierra Club, Nature Conservancy.
Okay.
And so I was heavily influenced by Ansel Adams, who I got to meet 3 times, and heavily influenced by Elliott Porter, nature photography. And that, because I'm an environmental preservationist and historic preservationist, those things made me want to capture them, preserve them for the future.
Wow, you just said a lot there that I'm really interested in. Tell me a little bit about Ansel Adams.
Well, first time I saw him was a class at University of Oregon. That's when I concluded I can never be a professional photographer. I'm not good enough to carry a suitcase. I got to meet him a couple other times. Once I was standing in La Fonda, which is a hotel down in Santa Fe, and talking to a friend of mine who was head of the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, and looks around and says, "Isn't that Ansel Adams?" And Tony looked around, happened to know him as a personal friend. "Ansel, come on over." So that was
You got
kind
to
of,
chat with him.
yeah.
Wow.
Again, I decided I'm not Ansel Adams, so maybe I'll become a lawyer instead.
Steve, how did you get into photography?
I got into it because of my wife. We got married, went on honeymoon, and had gotten a new camera just to kind of commemorate where we were going and all the events. And when we got back, we decided maybe we should do something together that would be a good social opportunity and help us improve things. And found the camera club, and it gave us something to do, both of us, together, and just loved it and have stuck with it.
That's great.
There's another aspect about getting involved in the camera club, and that is when you go on field trips, you want to go with photographers. If you go with hikers, they're going to be really irritated with you. Either that or they're down the trail and you're alone
You're on your
because
own.
you wanted to stop and shoot that flower. And you don't want to go with birders either because they don't like you making noise with your camera while they're trying to study that bird. So if you go with other photographers, they're perfectly happy to let you shoot that flower because they're shooting it too.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Well, we've got a lot to talk about. We've got some equipment to look at, but you've brought quite a few pictures with you.
Yeah.
And each picture is about a lesson or a point that some people can learn right now on how to improve their photography.
Our thesis is that I don't care what kind of camera you got, whether it's just a cell phone or a $6,000 camera, you actually don't need that $6,000 camera. What you need to think about is composition. And everybody's, no matter what little skill level they have, simply by using these little rules, you can significantly improve your photographs that you generate.
All right, well, let's talk through these slides.
This one's mine, just a rule of simplicity, also the rule of thirds. Notice how it's not bullseye. The only thing is that oak leaf up there in one of the third spots. If you divide the image into threes, you'll see that it's at one of the nodes where the threes intersect.
Not in the center.
Not in the center. Do not do a bullseye. Most people, if they're shooting out there in travel, they're shooting standing up, shooting people getting their full body, horizontal mode, and they have the Eiffel Tower growing out of the back of that person's head. You don't want that. Move the Eiffel Tower or the person off to the side, and it's a lot more dynamic as a photograph if you use this rule of thirds. That one rule alone, all by itself.
This one's mine, and again, it talks about odd numbers are more interesting to people naturally. And the other thing is framing. If you can do this with the camera before you have to work on it, or don't have the ability to work on it afterwards, a nice frame will draw the center of attention to things. So you see the person kind of framed within the window there. So framing is a good rule, and always odd numbers are more interesting than even numbers.
Doors, arches, even landscape, trees, shooting through bushes, all of those things can help focus the viewer's attention on whatever is your subject matter. This is mine, showing the rule of thirds again, also the rule of leading lines. If you can find some lines that will point to the center of interest, that will dramatically increase the energy of your particular photograph. And you see, again, it's the upper right-hand intersection of dividing that photograph into threes, both going up and down and side to side.
Changing perspective, like Charles said. You don't always want to have a static shot where you're just looking forward from eye level. On this one, we had my daughter lie down and we put leaves over and I shot from directly above her. There's been significant manipulation on this one, obviously, post-production, where I made the weave look. But without it, it still has a different perspective. You want to get a different look from high, low, from one side or another. That always makes it interesting.
And you don't have to have horizontal. You can have a much thinner photograph. Whatever you do, think about filling the frame. And again, this changes the perspective by looking down from above.
One of the other things is, if you have something that looks like it's moving, you do want to leave a little empty space for the thing to move into. So you want to make sure that there's a little bit of that illusion that it's going to be moving. The other thing on this one is plan ahead. I knew where the racers were going to go in this horse race. I got there early, planned it up, and just focused in and went, I know they're going to get there, and waited for my moment.
This is filling the frame again, and there's that rule of thirds. And get close. This is changing perspective as well. I happened to find a flower. One of the petals was missing, so I got an anatomical shot of the flower.
Converging lines, this is a great one. I knew where they were going to be, and I got there, focused where I wanted my focus to be, and just waited for the pig to jump into the frame. And the track makes a nice little converging line frames. It just makes it interesting.
Yeah, the bright track will lead your eye right to the pigs. It ostensibly violates one rule by having the main pig in dead center, but there's so much other things going on in this photograph of Steve's that give it dynamism and makes it more interesting, even though subject matter is in the center. Here's, again, the leading lines, and sometimes a rule to show scale. You don't know how big that tree is, although you do know how big tulips are. I left in the picture two tiny kids in the far right just to show this is a lot of distance, a lot of depth in this shot. Here's the rule of leading lines again, speaks for itself.
This one I want to point out, if with your camera you can adjust your focus to be real close and leave the background blurred out. It was very busy, so I made sure that my focus was really tight and left everything in the back blurred out, which really strengthens the subject for this.
Look for patterns in nature. Try to simplify things. Also, there's a rule of symmetry. Again, you don't want to go with the bull's eye. That's a lot of symmetry in that. But there's some circles within circles in this particular shot. Also, it illustrates that rule of third again. The very center of the apple blossoms is in that node that's in the upper right. There's some great times that people ignore if they're amateur photographers. They go out and they shoot the sunset and they forget that the next hour is really great even after the sun has disappeared. And the hour after that, sometimes called the twilight hour or the blue hour, you get some incredible colors. So when everyone else is left, you stick around with your camera and you're going to get some great shots.
Here's a great one. It isn't on the rule of thirds. That tic-tac-toe grid that's on there, The main line runs directly through, so it's halved. But rules, these aren't hard, fast rules. Sometimes they're meant to be broken, and this is a good one to show balance, which was a little more important than being on the third. And again, showing up early. If you're going to shoot anything with water, and we were there before the sun was up to make sure it was still.
Diagonals is like leading lines to get some energy. Don't have things straight up and down or straight across. Look to find some sort of diagonal. Also, look for patterns in nature that can make some very interesting, sometimes very abstract art. This is called Flights of Fancy. It won the Oregonians the first time I entered it, their annual garden contest. I called it Flights of Fancy because it looked to me like a flight of birds startled into flight.
They look like butterflies, birds just taking off. Beautiful.
Here's that leading lines again. Now this is a sunset shot, but it's the idea of the leading lines. Look for, move yourself around. Don't just stop at the first place. Go left, go right, get closer, back up. You'll find some ways to draw attention to your center of interest.
Again, here's a nice shot with patterns, like you say. And again, if you put that grid, that little red punch of color falls about on the third. And just be observant. I was just walking through a carnival and just happened to look to the right, and there it was. This one's a good one of watching for your opportunity with light. Light is one of the most important things when you're doing with photography. Look for natural highlights. These were spotlighted, and then the shadows showed up again with a kind of a repeating pattern on the bottom. So just be observant and look for those little spotlights that you can hit.
Here's that rule of odd numbers again, and the rule of simplicity. There's a lot going on in the background, but in post-production, I essentially eliminated everything, made it all black so that those stood out. Made sure also that the flowers didn't go out of frame, that they were isolated within the picture. There's 3 of them. Also did some manipulation in post-production. Some people like the purity of cameras. They say they don't touch anything after they've pressed the shutter, and I say, who cares? It's what the viewer will respond to, so if that takes a lot of work, then so be it.
Again, knew that there were a lot of bees and going to be a lot of opportunities. Got in a good spot where I had kind of highlighted and just waited for one to come by. A lot of shooting photography is knowing where you want to be and being patient once you're there to get the right shot.
This is one that had almost no manipulation to it at all. I was walking out of the meeting. A friend was walking out. I said, hey, I want to take a shot of you. Put him in front of a tree, shot him. I said, you weren't smiling. So he smiled, and I said, no, let's go back to the first one. To my great surprise, this has won all kinds of awards and substantial amount of money. The one other thing I want to mention to you is watch for light in the eyes. It's very important if you're shooting animals or people, make sure your eyes are sharp if nothing else is, and try to have a little light reflecting out of the eyes. That really makes a difference. The one last thing about this shot is try to keep things in frame. Now you crop close, but his hat kind of went out of frame, so I worked on it for a while to move the right corner of the hat so it was all in frame. And other than that, I did next to nothing to this shot. This is mine. Color makes a big difference, but it doesn't all have to be in color. There's that rule of thirds again. The girl's on the left-hand third, but she's walking, so I was leaving room on the right. But I blacked out everything except left the little yellow flower so that it really snaps in the picture and draws your attention to it.
Now, Chuck, I'd like to ask you, you blacked out. You mean you took the color out, you removed the color and made it black and white except for the flower?
These days, we no longer have black and white film. It's all digital, so you shoot in color, but the software can allow you to go instantly to black and white. And there's another technique called layers. So I essentially left the bottom layer in color, added another identical layer on top, turned that one to black and white, and then erased part of the top layer so the yellow of the flower showed through, but that's the only thing that showed through. It's called layers.
So a big part of what you talk about sometimes at the club is software.
Yeah, we do.
How do
We do a little bit of both. We talk about our equipment,
Uh-huh.
particularly at the beginning of our clinic night. And then on the second part, we talk about what we can do software, how we can lighten things, how we can clone things, manipulation.
Well, when we get through the slides, we're going to talk a little bit about
Sure.
equipment, and then let's not forget to talk about what kind of programs people could
Yeah.
get for not much.
Sure.
Okay.
This is a shot of mine. I just was taking pictures of some of the birds, and I was seeing one come in. And it was the craziest shot I think I've ever seen that I've ever taken. It just looked like the bird was exploding.
Yeah.
Didn't even know it until weeks later when I got home and pulled it up on the computer and went, I don't even remember taking it and it looking like that. So,
Sometimes you get lucky.
Yep.
Look for humor. Humor sells.
Well, you know, we look at a moving world all the time, and to see a still image is not natural.
Yeah.
And we would never have noticed that because
Yeah.
it happened too fast, but you snap something that we would never see without a camera. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
That one's kind of self-explanatory in light of what we've been talking about.
Next.
This is a rule of simplicity. I shot the Tualatin band. They were at the Pumpkin Regatta, and I thought, well, that's an okay shot. But then I noticed all of these little flutes in kind of a line, so I took out everything except the flutes. I was actually going for a shot from a Busby Berkeley movie of the 1930s of all these hands coming out of the floor with musical instruments and nothing else. So this is my homage to that. Again, the rule of simplicity, this is actually multiple colors, but by manipulating the software, you can turn it into a single color that's featured. Every other color of the stained glass windows in the background, that all came out. It's also to remind you, look for verticals as well as horizontals. Work with squares, experiment. That's the Hood Canal. You can have software now that turns a photograph into something that looks like a painting. This is done pretty well in competition.
I know some people are thinking, okay, these are really great. I really do want to come to this camera club. It's the second and fourth Tuesdays at 6:30 at
Yep.
the community center.
yep.
All right, just want to make sure people know where to come.
Well, that last one, by the way, was it looked like alien skies, but it was really the sewage pond at Cannon Beach. And the final rule here, we've been talking about rules, is they're all made to be violated. Once you understand the reasons for the rule, feel free to ignore them. So there's really no center of interest here, but it's falling out of the, think out of the box, in other words. These are just a few other odds and ends. The chickens, you ever tried to herd cats? Well, try herding chickens. Actually, you can't do it. Those are all individual shots pieced together, but it's won a lot of awards and sold quite a few. The whole idea is have fun. I called that one Rogues Gallery. But there's some other things on there. We didn't show you them, but for example, watch for things that lead your eye out of the frame. You want to stay within the frame when you're looking at it and your viewers look at it.
Wow, that was quite a short course in photography.
It was jam-packed.
People could rewind that and learn a lot. That was wonderful. Thank you for all that. It showed a lot of work. And
Yeah.
Chuck, go ahead, Steve.
These are all things that, like I say, if you want to come down to the club, feel free to come down and check us out. We talk about a lot of these things and more. So
I noticed you kept saying, well, you said often, they've won a lot of awards, and you have a show right now. Tell us about that.
Well, it comes down tomorrow, but there's about 30 or so photographs, prints that are hanging out at the Wortman Park Art Gallery tonight and into tomorrow morning. It's mostly photographs that have won in the past 5 years. I only started entering competition in about 2012, but there's been about approaching 100 awards. Now, some of them are only honorable mentions, but have even gotten like a 2-page spread in the national magazine called Popular Photography. In fact, several of my shots have been in there. I just discovered recently. I didn't notice them before, but went back, Googled it, and they were there.
Wonderful, wonderful. They are beautiful. And yours too, Steve. I just
Thanks.
really enjoyed that and learned a lot. And like I said, I want to go back and review those rules. Those are just great things to get started with.
And let me encourage that you get involved in competition. I'm basically lazy, and unless I have a deadline and a competition, I'm really not going to improve myself. So being in the competition, having other people judge them, that's how you learn.
All right. We've only got about 5 minutes now, I think. Let's talk about equipment. So we've said you can come with a cell phone. That's good enough. Don't stay away because you don't have expensive equipment.
Yep.
Well, let's start here, Chuck. This is your old camera.
This is my old camera. This has actually won all the awards. This is
Wow.
a brand new camera. This is about, you can buy this about $350 now in Costco. It's called a Nikon P600, a Coolpix P600. It's got a great telephoto on it. That's why I like it. It's the equivalent of a lens that is about a 1300 millimeter lens. There's now others in the series that are like a 2000 millimeter lens, and it can also focus down to 1 inch. So I like street photography, shooting down the block, getting a headshot. They don't even know I'm shooting them, or shooting something an inch away makes, for me, for an exciting photograph.
An award-winning photographer with a $350 camera. That's something people could just not help them get into photography, not worrying about the fact that they don't need to have thousands of dollars.
Now, this is more expensive, but it's not too expensive. I used to have $6,000 cameras, but I would drop them in water, break them. This one's about $700 at Dallas a focal point down in Dallas, Oregon.
What is that?
This is a Sony. This is not what they call a mirrorless camera, but it's very light, it's very small. That one I fit in a coat pocket. This one without the long lens on it will fit in an even smaller coat pocket. And the whole point is, if you haven't got a camera, you can't take the shot. Sometimes I've seen beautiful shots and thought, dang, I could really make something out of that, but I had a heavy camera back in the car. Light cameras, you'll carry them with you.
Steve, what have you got?
I got just a standard DSLR. It has the interchangeable lenses, so I can put on the longer lenses. And this one I think we probably got for around $500 on this. So some of these range up to probably $2,000. This is fairly old, so. And then, of course, I brought the cell phone.
Now, list out the advantages over a cell phone of these other types of cameras. What kind of things do you get?
You get a lot more control over what you're doing. You can, like I said, we talked about changing that depth of field, getting the focus really tight and leaving everything blurry in the background. We've talked about taking quick multiple shots.
Shots in dark, shots
with motion. A cell phone.
telephoto, wide angle. With the cell phone, you're pretty much restricted to either the one basic horizontal, or sometimes they've got these add-on lenses that you can get, but frankly, the quality of them is pretty poor. Yeah. This also allows you to blow up big.
We've got just a few seconds left. Let's talk about software. Just give us a name of a program that's $50.
You could probably get a previous edition of Elements.
Okay.
It will allow you to do almost everything. For about $70, you can get a brand new version, what's called Lightroom. Lightroom's really great for storing and finding your photographs again once you take a lot of them. It also can do some basic manipulation in Lightroom. I think you also have Lightroom.
Yeah, you can subscribe to a monthly for about $10 a month, maybe.
Okay, different way to do it now. You don't buy the package, you just subscribe.
There's a learning curve in each of these software programs, but that's taking it to the next level.
Yeah.
Camera, your phone to this is a level up, to the interchangeable lenses is a level up, and that software dramatic editing ability is a level up as well.
All right. Well, being here representing the Yamhill Valley Camera Club, Chuck Hillestad, Steve Singleton, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.